Bob, I have had my head filled with religious arguments. Now I'm coming to you as a agnostic, as an atheist. I don't even know whether you're an agnostic or an atheist.
Well, I used to call myself an agnostic,
Huh?
and it didn't seem to go far enough.
People thought you were too balanced.
They assumed I still had some gullibility left. There's none left, But I find God simply to be not a useful concept. It doesn't solve any problems for me. And I have yet to find a problem it can solve.
So, if does that mean you look upon God as kind of a negative? Your atheism, your agnosticism is a negative that God can't help me, or do you have affirmative arguments why there is no God or likely no God?
I would like to turn that around and ask, what evidence is there for a God?
Well, people would point to the existence of the world, that everything works so well.
I think we're getting pretty close to explaining all that. I mean, that's what the complexity of life, for example, was beautifully done by Darwin. And we keep elaborating on that in finer and finer details. The theory of evolution works so perfectly. No other idea of mankind has answered so many questions as evolution. It is the most productive idea that anyone has ever come forward with. And this just goes on. We have less and less need.
Well, people would say that God either set the laws of physics in motion to allow evolution to work, and some would go further than that and say that God not only did that, but intervenes in the evolutionary process. Those are two different kinds of religious views.
Those are two different ones. Now,
right.
If we go back to the first one, the deist idea that
set the laws in motion.
He got the thing going, and
right.
that's that.
Just kind of
then there's absolutely no use for this guy.
After that, yeah. Well,
I mean, he's just not in our world. He's not of any interest. He doesn't do anything. If, in fact, he can intervene, if he intervened in the laws of evolution to result in human beings, God knows why he'd do that. I mean, where's the evidence? There is no evidence of intervention. We don't need it. We just don't need it. And the more we learn, the less we need it. So the answer is just learn more.
But a lot of very sophisticated arguments in terms of analytical philosophy and looking at the fine-tuning of the universe, the unlikely nature of everything. Sure, it all works. Everybody will admit that, and there's a scientific explanation for why it all works. But the fact that it is able to work, kind of this meta approach to the whole process. It used to be that the God was in the religion, in the science at a detailed level. Now that's been eliminated because of what you've said. Science is self-consistent, it's in a self and works by itself. But now the religious view takes a look at this whole picture of science and says that whole picture couldn't have existed on its own, but rather there has to be some supernatural process or power that set it there.
And my only question is, does he still monkey around with it? Or was this just back at the moment of creation?
Yeah, and those are two different approaches.
They're two different approaches. And I don't find either one of them very useful. It's just not a useful concept. And in fact, it's a concept that seems to have caused most of the suffering, or much of the suffering in the world.
That is hard to refute.
Almost all of our wars have a religious component. Both sides pray to God. God is on both sides. This is not a very useful concept. It has not led to peace in the world. On the contrary, it seems to push the things the other way. And so I just fail to find any reason that you would want to even entertain I can see why people would have, at one time, before we understood enough science, that we had confidence that now everything can be explained if we just do the science well enough. We're not there yet, of course. We never will be. But we're getting closer all the time. And that's what that's what we do well. We've learned a few rules about how not to fool ourselves. And in the first place, we do science openly. We share everything we learn.
So everybody can critique each other, find
They
mistakes
can not only
in the
critique
logic.
each other, we explain to them how we arrived at that, and they can go out and try to
Repeat
reproduce it.
Right, right.
And so science is open. Anybody can play, and they can challenge anyone. And if they can do a better experiment and come up with a more convincing result, we'll rewrite the textbooks. They've been rewritten a lot of times.
Sure.
And we keep rewriting them. But you don't rewrite the Bible. And that's the fundamental difference between these two. One is locked in, and the other accepts change.
And makes no progress.
It's locked in and makes no progress. Nothing changes.
Well, the argument would be it doesn't change because it shouldn't change. It's the
they got it right in the first place.
Got it right the first time, right?
Well, if they got it right in the first place, why is this world in such turmoil? And it is. And the battles aren't just between those that believe in the God of Abraham and the rest of the world. Between people who accept the God of Abraham, there are a lot of wars going on.
I heard a funny joke one time. It said, the problem for the Jewish religion is, since the world is in such a mess, why doesn't the Messiah come? But the problem for the Christian religion is, since the Messiah has come, why is the world in such a mess?
And yeah, they're both right. The world is in a mess, but it needn't be. The beauty is that we now have at our disposal the means to solve all of our problems. Life is tough enough. I mean, this is a tough planet. Everything is eating everything else.
Yeah.
And there's any mercy shown. But we now are to the point that we can begin to control our planet. We can discover that we're messing up the atmosphere and we need to clean it up. We can make these corrections.
Now, religion would say that science is unable to make those moral value judgments without the guidance of religion.
Well, it hasn't provided a lot of guidance up to now. I mean, both sides are praying to the same God. So I don't see that as much of a solution.